Right, kia ora koutou, good afternoon everybody. As you can see, I'm joined by the Minister for Emergency Management, Kieran McAnulty, Roger Bull from NEMA. Cyclone Gabrielle is the most significant weather event New Zealand has seen this century. The severity and the breadth of the damage that we are seeing has not been experienced in a generation. This morning we declared a national emergency for only the third time in our history. A short time ago, I landed back in Wellington. I've been in constant contact with NEMA throughout the day and have just received a briefing from officials. We are still building a picture of the effects of the cyclone as it continues to unfold, but what we do know is the impact is significant and it is widespread. Here is the current situation as we know it at the moment. The centre of the cyclone is just north of the East Cape. It's moving in a southeasterly direction away from the country. There is still rain and wind forecast for the Tairāwhiti Gisborne area, a few further showers for Hawke's Bay, and a large band of rain through the central part of the country. The good news is overnight tonight, in most areas we are expecting to see the weather easing. In the last 24 hours or so, Fire and Emergency New Zealand had 1,842 incidents related to Cyclone Gabrielle in their system and a further 383 other incidents. 200 Defence Force personnel have been so far deployed and there are more ready on standby. 22 Army vehicles are on the ground assisting with evacuations and emergency responses in Northland, Waikato, Auckland, Hawke's Bay and the Bay of Plenty. Vehicles and drivers are spread throughout Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Taranaki at the ready to support local civil defence efforts. An NH-90 helicopter and the Navy frigate Te Mana have also been deployed to assist with search and rescue missions. Transpower has declared a grid emergency following the loss of electricity supply to the Hawke's Bay and Gisborne, with potential outages for an extended period of time. Approximately 225,000 customers have been out without power across the North Island. That's a significant increase from the 75,000 yesterday evening. This is a very significant event for the electricity network, and the companies have not seen this level of damage since Cyclone Bowler in 1988. The situation is changing rapidly, and the lines companies are expecting that there could be more customers to be affected. They're working hard to restore power as quickly as possible. They've been able to do that in some parts of Hawke's Bay and Gisborne. But restoration may be delayed in some parts until weather conditions can improve. Power outages have also had a significant impact on the fibre, copper and mobile telecommunications networks. The Telecommunications Emergency Forum has been activated and is working closely with NEMA and local civil defence operations. The first priority of the telecommunications companies remains the restoration of regional cell phone signals. High winds and ongoing poor weather is hampering progress in that area. NEMA has also been notified by Chorus of a fibre cut, which is impacting Taupo through to Napier, including Gisborne, and the teams are working hard to restore connectivity in those areas. Woolworths, who owns Countdown and Super Value stores, have reported that they have 11 stores closed across the North Island, and Foodstuffs, who own Pack and Save, New World and Foursquare chains, have 30 stores closed. The stores that have been affected are in Northland, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Kaitaia and Whangarei. One of the key messages at this point is please only buy what you need. There is enough stock in warehouses, but getting it to stores is the main issue at the moment. That is likely to get easier in the coming days, so please only buy what you need to get yourselves through. A high number of roads have been affected by surface flooding and by slips. Crews are working around the clock to fix damage across the state highway network and on local roads. Waka Kotahi is updating the online journey planner with the latest available information regularly, and this is still the best source of information for anybody who needs to travel. As of 1:45 p.m. this afternoon, international and domestic flights had started again at Auckland Airport, but widespread travel disruption and delays are expected for the next few days, and the weather is likely to still play an impact there. Community organisations have continued to mobilise swiftly to provide flood relief and to support whānau, and they'll continue to do that. Yesterday's $11.5 million community support package will help to provide immediate relief for individuals, families and households. We know that providers and community groups have been working hard to support those affected by the floods, and it's a priority to get that funding out to them as quickly as possible. The Ministry of Social Development are leading that work. I want to acknowledge the many communities, particularly in the upper and eastern parts of the North Island, that have borne the brunt of this latest cyclone and the previous one. I know that there are people in other parts of the country and overseas trying to get hold of loved ones who are now cut off without reception. Our emergency response teams are working as hard as they can to get communications back online as soon as possible. And on behalf of all New Zealanders, I want to again express our enormous gratitude to our emergency responders. They're putting in the hard yards and their lives are on the line in the service of their communities. To the families of the volunteer firefighters who responded to events at Muriwai last night, and to the wider Fire and Emergency New Zealand family, our thoughts and hopes are with all of you. To the men and women of the Defence Force, to the linemen and women, the communications companies, the supermarkets, the transport companies working to get food and goods to where they are needed, to the roading crews that are making that all possible, we say thank you to you as well. We've received reassuring support from the Australian government, indicating that they are ready to provide support where and if needed. I've also had a call from the UK Prime Minister this morning, who's also offered the UK support and assistance. So finally, before I open up for questions, here is what we're asking people across the country to do. If you are feeling unsafe, there are a number of emergency centres that are open. Go to your local Civil Defence website for more details. If you are relocating, please let your friends and family know what you are up to. Please avoid all non-essential travel. Stay at home if you can, and as long as it is safe for you to do that. If you have to travel, please drive to the conditions. Watch out for flooding and debris on the road. Stay safe and do not take any chances. And keep up to date with Met Service weather warnings and advice from your local Civil Defence and Emergency Management group. It's important to stay informed even if your power is out, so listen to the radio for the latest Civil Defence updates. What we've witnessed over the last few weeks has taken a huge toll on many New Zealanders. It's been turning people's lives quite literally upside down. But we've also seen Kiwis from all walks of life coming together and stepping in and lending a hand. We've seen councils, businesses, community groups, iwi, our Defence Force, our emergency service, and our central government agencies all mucking in to help. And that is what Kiwis do, and that is how we will get through this. We're now happy to open for questions.
Prime Minister, can you have any update on the number of people displaced?
No, we don't have a firm number on that yet, but I'll ask Minister McAnulty whether he's had anything since I got off the plane.
Well, we're only working on estimates here because there are still areas where we're struggling to communicate with, but we do know that it's roughly around 2,500. 1,000 people in the far north evacuated, 400 households in Auckland, 93 in Bay of Plenty, 75 in Waikato, and roughly 1,000 people in Hawke's Bay.
Have you managed to have much contact with particularly the Tairāwhiti region where those comms have been patched in place? There's
been some improvement, but it's minor. There are other regions as well that we're struggling to communicate with. Wairoa in particular is of concern, like I say, there's been some improvement since we last spoke. The satellite phones are continuing to work, and some areas of Tairāwhiti have regained connection.
Have you had any update on the missing firefighter?
Sorry?
The missing firefighter.
So the search is underway. They did a geotech assessment of the site, and they've been able to resume the search.
Prime Minister, is the worst over, or do we still need to brace? I know that it's moving away in Tairāwhiti, but what's the message to people who are watching who have just had a really rough day?
People should still expect some bad weather overnight, particularly on the east coast, and of course, in some cases, as we know from our experience over the last few weeks, even if the rainfall eases off a bit, more rainfall can compound on top of the rainfall that we've already seen. So when it comes to things like slips and so on, we could still see more of that, even as the weather starts to ease. So we're still in for a bumpy time ahead. But as I've said, the good news is that we should see some calmer weather coming within the next 24 hours or so. And again, that will help us with our response efforts and help us to get a better handle on what's happening in some of those parts of the country that have been harder to reach so far.
Can you give us an idea of the scale of the Defence Force, the police, the emergency officials? I mean, for most of us, we're in just one area and we're only seeing bits and pieces coming in. Can you give us an idea of the big picture?
We've seen all of the different arms of government working closely together to get the resources to where they can best be used. Defence Force, for example, one of the things that they're doing is providing transport logistics to move people around the country, and that includes moving some of our responders from the South Island to the North Island. So the Defence Force are involved in that. Police have a very active operation around the country because they are in situ in many cases and can provide on-the-ground support, as do fire and emergency, who of course are dealing with some of that frontline response. So it's a pretty coordinated effort across government, all the more so because of the work that's happening here in this building out of the bunker to make sure that they are all communicating with each other and joining up in the way we would expect them to.
Tens of thousands of people? This might be a question for the controller, but tens of thousands.
We might have a specific number, but I can tell you there's tens of thousands of people involved in the response because, of course, there are a lot of volunteers on the ground helping out as well. Did you have a more specific number? I don't know whether
You're welcome.
Thanks, Minister. No, look, so we don't have a total at this point. It's a little bit too hard to sort of put that together, but it's a very significant effort. You'd have to look back to the response to the Kaikoura earthquake or the Canterbury earthquake sequence to see a larger response to a natural disaster in New Zealand.
Claire.
In terms of that, has anything been done yet to get like generators and maybe portaloos out to those places where they're expecting the power to be off for days, if not weeks?
One of the challenges there is that one of the reasons the power is off in some of those areas is that they're very difficult to get to at the moment, and the electricity companies will be working around the clock as soon as they're able to access the points of failure to try and get the power back on. And of course, as we see how the situation evolves and as we can get more access to some of those places, the Defence Forces on standby and ready to be able to provide some technical expertise and of course their logistical and transport capacity to be able to provide things like, if we can get them, and they're needed generators and portable toilets and all of those sorts of things.
Are you concerned that there might be an increase in the number of people that are displaced in those areas where you can't communicate?
That is